Yeah, Houlihan, what do you want?
Michael put a bottle of Barefoot Cabernet and one of the Sauvignon Blanc on Brown's desk.
We bottled the wine and want you to see it.
Brown picked up the bottle of red and looked it up and down. Then he did the same with the white.
This is what you asked for. There aren't any leaps or hills or rivers. It's a label she can read from 4 feet away. The logo is the same as the name. It's in plain English and easy to pronounce. It's a name she'll remember and a logo she won't forget.
Michael was proud of what they'd done, in the way of a student with a good report card. Barefoot was unique, interesting, and fit everything that Brown and the others said would sell. The wine, he knew, was terrific. The label was friendly and fun. What's not to love, he thought. Brown kept looking at the bottles. He didn't say anything. The silence was uncomfortable, but Michael sat quietly. Brown looked at the bottles again, but said nothing. Michael figured it was just Don Brown being Don Brown, make everyone sweat.
So, Don, how many truckloads do you want?
Brown put the bottle down at his desk and looked at Michael like he was from Mars. Michael couldn't have gotten a worse look from Brown if he had clucked.
Are you crazy? I can't buy this. Nobody knows this brand. Nobody's ever seen or heard of Barefoot.
It's everything you asked for.
Yeah? So what? That doesn't matter. No one's gonna buy something they never heard of. You gotta advertise it. If you're willing to spend $1 million on TV ads, I'll buy it from you.
We don't have that kind of advertising budget.
In truth, they had no advertising budget. There wasn't $100 for ads.
Then you gotta go make a name for yourself. You gotta go sell it to every mom and pop store in every corner till everyone knows what Barefoot is.
Michael felt like he just got hit by a brick.
That'll take years.
Well, Houlihan, you better get started.
Hi, I'm Paul from Trending Who, What, Where, and When. Today I will be speaking with the New York Times best-selling authors Michael Houlihan and Bonnie Harvey about their book, The Barefoot Spirit, How Hardship, Hustle, and Heart Built America's #1 Wine Brand. They will be joining us from Forestville, California.
Welcome to the beautiful Sonoma County wine country. It's here on the Russian River that people come from all over the world to taste some of the best wines in the world. It's also here on the Russian River where the world's largest wine brand was created. Hi, I'm Michael Houlihan, and I'm the founder of Barefoot Wine. And we wrote a book called The Barefoot Spirit, How Hardship, Hustle, and Heart Built America's #1 Wine Brand. We turned it into a theatrically performed audio book that you can listen to on your next trip to the wine country. Just check it out. We started in a little farmhouse right up the river. Healdsburg is about 70 miles north of San Francisco. It's on Highway 101 that connects San Francisco with Canada. And it's close to the ocean. And it's also in the heart of the Sonoma County wine country. And we live in the Russian River Valley.
Where you would take our followers if they came to visit you in Forestville, California.
Oh,
Well, you can start off.
we are very fortunate. We have so many parks all around us here. There's a park that's called Riverfront Park, and you can walk around a lake. It has a couple lakes there, so that's about an hour. We have redwoods at Riverfront Park and also at Armstrong State Park, which is just a little bit west of here. We always love to see people enjoying the Pacific coast because we've got a wonderful coastline, and our entire Sonoma coastline is dotted with state parks on the beaches. So those are our favorite things to do. Of course, there's also wine tasting.
Yeah. And then there's great hikes in the coastal range, you know, up in the coastal mountains. So we have quite a few favorite hikes. And from some of the points up there, you can look out and you can see the Russian River Valley, and you can see the mouth of the Russian River, and then you can see the ocean. So and it's quite historic. You know, we have a Russian fort here that was built. That's why they call it the Russian River. It was built in the 1830s through 1850s, and it's called Fort Ross because the Americans couldn't pronounce Fort Russia, so they called it Fort Ross. And it is a beautiful example of
Yes.
19th century architecture and frontier pioneerism. So there's some great things to see here. The city of Healdsburg was founded in 1850, and it's a jewel of a town. It has a town square. It looks like a town maybe in New England. All the buildings are 1850s style, so they've kept the theme throughout the town. There's lots of browser shops. There's lots of
Yes.
wine tasting, lots of great hotels, spas, everything else. And
Restaurants are top notch. It's a real destination point
and
for visitors.
it's not one of these suburban towns. It's a real country town. When you leave Healdsburg, you are in the real country. But what's nice about Healdsburg is you don't have to do anything except walk or stumble down the street.
There's so many tasting rooms in downtown Healdsburg.
Okay, that would be
Exactly.
convenient.
You can spend the whole day there.
But we have a beautiful road here that's called it's called West Side Road, and we have it's called what, River Road, Winery
River
Association,
or Wine Map.
or Wine Road. It's called Russian River Wine Road. And your listeners should look up Russian River Wine Road. Some of the finest wineries. The hardest grape to grow is Pinot Noir. It only grows in 5 or 6 places in the world. And what they all have in common is hot days and cool nights. And that only happens where you've got fog from the ocean. So that means that these grapes grow close to the ocean. So you don't get a lot of good Pinot Noir, say in Napa where it's hot, or in the Central Valley of California where it's hot, unless you're down closer to the bay, like in the Carneros region.
Okay.
But Sonoma County is blessed with cool nights. I mean, our days in the summer get up to 80 and our nights drop down to like 52. There's a lot of local wine country color in the book. So I know that a lot of your listeners are travelers. The Sonoma County wine country is like no other. I mean, we have an ocean. We have beautiful rivers. We have mountains. We have little nooks and crannies that you can discover. It's not the big commercial, 4-lane highway. It's more like little country roads, and it's a great place to go and discover. And you'll get a lot of that in the book. I'm sure that after you listen to the book, you'll want to come and see it for yourself. So we welcome you. Yes.
It must be a really nice place to live.
It is.
It's our chosen spot.
a lot of people, they move to where the work is, and we moved to where we wanted to live, and we both moved here independently, and we met here. And then we built our business here. But our first choice was, where do you want to live? And that's pretty gutsy when you don't have a good job.
Well, it looked like you turned it around.
Well, it took some time, but yes, we finally did. Yes. Well, it's our grand room.
Yes.
Yeah. This is where we meet with people. When we had our wine business, we would have winemaker dinners here, and we would invite our distributors here from all over the world. And after we sold the wine business, we use it for conferences. We bring in students from all over the world who are studying entrepreneurship.
Students for entrepreneurship. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yes, Singapore has brought over students from Nanyang University, I think 8 times now.
Okay.
And they brought over as little as 45 and as many as 122.
And what's the other extreme, Bonnie? What's the other extreme from Singapore?
Well, there was Moscow. We talked to them about company culture and
Soft skills.
soft skills. We taught the Russians soft skills, Paul.
Yeah, if you can believe it.
They could use them.
Yeah, they could.
Could be.
They could. They said it was very interesting. They said it was a very interesting approach to business.
It was probably a novel idea. I don't know.
So then the students would stay in town somewhere, obviously, and then every day they would come to where you are?
Something like that. They actually were staying in a hotel that was south of here. So it was about an hour and a half drive for them to get here.
Okay.
And we spent the entire day together. Besides talking to them in here where we'd start, we'd take them outside where we have 4 acres and we'd walk them around our paths. And we had 4 stops where we would stop and tell them a different part of the story. And then we would go to a vineyard and a winery where we'd have lunch, followed by a talk from the vineyard manager about the business of wine, the wine industry, vineyards and wine and tourism here in Sonoma County and the history of it. And then whenever possible, we take them to a local park, Paul, and we walk them around a park and show them redwood trees and talk to them about, it's interesting, the redwood trees really don't have deep roots, although they're the tallest tree,
Okay.
but they merge their roots together. So they have more strength as a community. So we use that as a lesson of building, you know, your foundation and your strength by connecting with your community.
What a unique thing to be doing at this point in time.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. Unfortunately, our Nang Yang students had to cancel this year, but just today I got confirmation from Skolkovo, which is the Russian university that has MBA students, that we're going to do an online session.
Oh, that would be a good idea.
Early next year.
And I guess they come with different expectations and wanting probably to learn different things from you.
That's very true. And we always get a profile of each student beforehand. So we have a better feel of where they're coming from, if they already have businesses or they're working in a family business. And then we kind of address certain things that we believe that they would be interested in according to their own profiles.
How do you find these groups? How do you search them out?
We've been speaking to universities that teach entrepreneurship for what, 15 years now, I think. One of our biggest connections was USASP, the U.S. Association of
Business and Entrepreneurs.
Business and Entrepreneurs. And as it turns out, they are primarily the instructors at the universities that teach entrepreneurship. And we also spoke at a world convention for USASP. And that's where we met some of the principals from Nanyang University there. I happened to be sitting next to him at a dinner table. And we got to talking, and he said he brought students over here to Silicon Valley, and then he took them up to the wine country for a day. And I said, oh, where? He says, in Napa. And I said, Napa? I said, you should bring them over to Sonoma County. I said, I'll host you there. And they've been here 8 times.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
So where you gave that speech for that group, where was that? Was that in the United States or was that outside the United States?
That was in Dublin, Ireland. No, we speak to the students and our clients in our home. Lately, because of COVID, we've had to do it over Zoom. Okay. But you know, we're looking forward to that, getting by that, because we really like the human contact, and the students do too, and so do our clients. It's been tough. The COVID's been tough on the whole speaking and teaching industry.
So what inspired you to write the Barefoot Spirit?
It was the people that we'd worked with, our employees. They said that we've never worked in a company like this, where everybody really worked together towards the same goal, where we were so tight. It was like a wonderful family. We called them all Barefooters. And because our working environment was so successful and our employees were happy and they were all working to please the people that we contracted with, either for supplies or to make sales or whatever, that we were very successful. And when you combine all those successes together, you don't want to just, or we didn't want to just sell the company and then let it go. We really had to share it with others, because being an entrepreneur is a difficult task. Starting a business is not for sissies.
Yeah.
And there's so many things that you can't learn unless you're actually doing it. Well, we did it. And we're sharing the lessons that we learned with others, so they won't have to go through quite as much pain and suffering and expenses that we did.
Listening to your book, I was amazed at how much interesting and informative content was brought out in the business audio theater presentation. This is the
Thank you.
best audiobook I've ever listened to.
Yay.
I can easily understand why The Barefoot Spirit was a New York Times bestseller and an audiobook, was a finalist for an Audie Award.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. We think it's pretty spectacular the way it was done. We had an excellent author for the book, Rick Cushman.
Mhm.
He understood wine. He had a great sense of humor, and he took our stories and put them in story form. So we weren't giving lessons on how to succeed in business, but we were giving stories that showed how to learn. You know, I mean, we made huge mistakes and lots of them, and we talk about that in the book. And so you see that it's not just all roses and wine and roses, you know.
Yeah.
It's tough work, but the lessons we learned have to do with any business, not just the wine business. So that makes it very applicable to students of entrepreneurship throughout the world.
And you have a free gift for our listeners.
Oh,
Yes, we do.
very good.
So
It's our first chapter, right?
we're going to give them the first installment on the Barefoot Spirit. It's the first chapter
Of the audiobook.
yeah, it's an episode, a 25-minute episode. It's got some famous actors from Hollywood, you know, like
Ed Asner.
Ed Asner, you know, is in it, and others. And you're gonna be able to get a free taste of it for 25 minutes. If you like it, you can buy the rest of the book. But that's going to be in the show notes. There will be a link which we've sent to you, Paul, which I believe that you can produce and publish in your show notes.
Yeah.
So
No.
if you click on that, you'll be able to get your free chapter. And we'd really like to know what you think about it. And,
Yes.
and if you enjoy it, and hopefully you'll buy the rest of the book.
I was surprised at the different stages that you experienced in the wine industry, beginning with negotiating for a grape grower.
Yeah, well, Bonnie had a client who was owed $300,000 worth of money for grapes that the grower had sold this winery for 3 consecutive years. And the winery hadn't paid him, and she noticed it. She was doing, his oversight management. And so she came to me, who she just met, and she said, you got some business experience. Why don't you go to this winery and see if you can't collect this? So I went over there. When I got there, they had just declared bankruptcy, and all I could get out with was a trade for $300,000 worth of wine, which is in bulk, and bottling services, which is putting the bulk wine into the glass. In other words, they paid me in bottles of wine that had no label. And so, I brought it back to Bonnie and I said, here you go. All we have to do is, come up with a label and a distribution system and a marketing plan and a few other things.
Oh, don't forget all the licensing.
And all the licensing and compliance and, how hard can that be,
How long did that take? Hey.
And then at that point, at some point, you became partners with the grape grower and wine producer?
At first we did. At first we did.
Right.
Because after all, we were working for him as consultants to collect funds that were due him. But ultimately, he had the common sense to figure that he was a winemaker and a grower, and he didn't want to take over a mercantile, wine marketing company that required 150% of your attention on top of being a winemaker and a grower. So he was ready to opt out. And we said, well, what are we going to do with this trade that we've, got? And then we said, well, here's an idea. What if we take it over and we execute it and then we pay you? So we take over the debt, we take over the company, we run the company, the wine company. And so he was happy with that because the growers who were in bankruptcy court got paid 4 cents on the dollar, 4 years later. And we gave him 100 cents on the dollar.
Mhm.
So he was quite happy to recover his funds.
And then you worked together for a long time and then ultimately becoming a wine producer yourself.
That's right. What we realized was that there were facilities out there that were sitting empty because there was too much wine and not enough sales. And so because we were from outside the wine business, we looked at it more objectively than, say, an artist who was a winemaker would look at it. So instead of saying, if we make good wine, they'll come and buy it, we said, we better go get them to buy something. We better go find out what they will buy, and then we should make that for them, which was a kind of a different approach. Seems like it's more logical, but it was something that only an outsider would do. And so that was a period of research that took about 6 months to a year. We asked everybody in the industry, not just the white collar, but the blue collar. We say people with dirt under their fingernails. We asked them what they knew about labels, what they knew about cartons, what they knew about wines, and which ones were selling and moving through their warehouse and on their shelves, and which ones weren't, and why they thought. And boy, did that give us some great insight.
You came at it from a different perspective. I think you put the work in advance.
Right. First you sell it, then you make it.
Yeah.
From that point, you became a wine producer with national distribution, producing and selling over 600,000 cases of wine per year.
Well, that took about 20 years. So it wasn't quite like overnight.
Yeah.
But we learned so much along the way. Every state has their own compliance that we had to deal with. We realized that we couldn't go into a new territory unless we had a sales representative that worked on our payroll, watching everything that was going on, dealing with the retailers and the salespeople at the retailers, the distributors, and going into the communities to see what it was that they were interested in besides buying a great bottle of wine at a low price. And we supported the community's fundraisers. And that was our way of advertising, of getting the word out there, is going into the communities and finding out what they were interested in. By supporting them, they supported us.
That seemed to work very well for you.
It worked very well, so well that we never paid for advertising.
That's amazing.
And became one of the fastest growing wines in the nation without paid advertising. So that was another major lesson that we really wanted to get through to other entrepreneurs is, you can't say you don't have enough money or you don't have enough knowledge of your industry. Hey, that's not necessarily what it takes. You just have to be, hustlative. You've got to be creative and innovative and treat other people the way you want to be treated. Treat them with respect.
The different creative and unique solutions that you came up with for your wine, starting with the Barefoot labels and the Barefoot on the Beach posters and the Barefoot floor stickers.
Yeah. Well, many companies practice what they call the need to know basis. So they put their employees on a need to know basis. And the first time the employee finds out the company's in trouble is when he gets a pink slip. See,
Yeah.
so we believed in the know the need basis, which is just the opposite, which is if you tell the people who are working for you what your problems are and you let them get involved and engaged in the solution, they'll come up with some pretty good solutions. So most of our marketing materials came from our own people and also from people that we were associated with who were either distributors or store clerks. You know, why don't you do this? Or here's a great idea. Or, you know, with a name like that, you can do this. You know, the stickers on the floor is a classic example. We would bring the salespeople in and they would have a report to the employees and they would tell them, you know, here's the good news and the bad news. The good news is, you know, we just got into this giant Florida chain store called Publix with over 600 stores. The bad news is that they're going to do a test market in 100 stores and they put us on the bottom shelf and nobody ever looks down. And so somebody says, well, I guess you'll have to go after the foot traffic, and everybody laughs. And then somebody else says, well, wait a minute, that's not so silly. What if we made decals that were footprints and we walked them in from the door to our product and they looked down and saw our product and they'd be laughing.
You put a big sign there that says barefoot with an arrow there. Because when they get to the last footstep and they're facing our product, the shelf that has our product on the bottom shelf, they're going to look down to try to figure out why they're there.
Yeah, why did the feet stop? So guess who came up with that idea? The receptionist. Now, what if we had a need to know basis, we wouldn't have shared our problem with her.
We all met, 100% of the company would meet to hear all the salespeople's challenges, opportunities, goals, and see what we could contribute. And that worked very well.
The ideas came from everywhere in your company.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So tell us about your worthy cause marketing system that you implemented.
Well, I think the first thing I want to say is there's a lot of talk today about cause marketing. And cause marketing is where, you know, you donate a pair of shoes to some people who need shoes every time you buy shoes or socks or whatever. That's cause marketing, where you champion a cause and then you tell the general public that you're championing this cause, hoping that the general public will buy your product because they see that you're a good guy. Okay, that's cause marketing. Now
that's wonderful.
And that is wonderful,
really
and we need it, and
that.
God bless them for doing it, you know, and we need more of that. But then there's what we call worthy cause marketing, which is a whole different approach. Now, what worthy cause marketing is, you still identify a group that you want to identify with, but they're much more local. In fact, they are so local that they are in the neighborhoods where your product or service is for sale. And what you do is you support that group in interesting ways. Like, for one thing, you help them set up and tear down for their fundraiser. For another thing, you take their goals and you write their goals on little tags that are on your product to educate the people in the supermarkets about this cause that's going on in their neighborhood and why it's something to donate to. And the idea there is, you're not talking to the general public, you're talking to the members of the nonprofit.
The community.
So it's the community that is the nonprofit. All their supporters and volunteers and members and boards of directors, and in the hope that they will have a social reason to buy your product. So now here you're basically, instead of talking to the general public, you're talking to a very small, you know, group that you hope will not only buy your product, but will become advocates for your brand. And remember, they're already organized. They're already talking to each other. They're already networked. So you don't have to build a new network. What you have
we
to do,
did help them get more people interested in their own projects and what they were doing by getting the message out into the marketplace. This is an area where the nonprofits really have an opportunity to let their community know what's going on is in the marketplace.
You supported the Surfrider Foundation from early on, the Bluewater Task Force.
right.
They had 3 chapters at
Yeah,
the time.
so we got involved Okay, first of all, I personally went to school in Santa Barbara and Long Beach in Southern California. So I did spend some time on a surfboard, and I appreciated it. And I appreciated what these guys were doing and the fact that the government wasn't. And they were the only group that was testing the water every day for your safety and for your children's safety. And because there was a lot of bacteria in the water, because in those days, the cities were sending their sewage water out to sea without adequate treatment. And a lot of that bacteria was alive, and it would result in skin infections, ear infections, eye infections. The kids who were in the water all the time would be the ones that would get the most sick. So they developed the Bluewater Task Force, which included testing the water. All their members who were surfing went out and they tested the water, and they tested the water for bacteria on Petri dishes that they opened under the surface of the water, closed it up, wrote the time and date and location and their name and everything, dropped it in the mailbox, went to the Surfrider lab analyzed it, found out what kind of bacteria it was, where it occurred, and could identify the polluter, gave it to their lawyers. See, so now you got doctors, scientists, and lawyers. They're all surfers, right? So this is the sport that they have in common. And so they get the judge to close the beach down. So now when that happens, of course, they have to do it for safety, but all the restaurants and everybody else that's on the beach, they're hurt by this. Their business is hurt. So they put pressure on the government and on the legislatures to clean up their act. So this is how we were able to help them do that. We were able to help them raise funds for test kits, basically. And we did that in the supermarkets by putting little miniature surfboards on the necks of our Barefoot bottle that said, hang 10 for clean water. So instead of asking people, buy two, get one free, or, take $2 off your sausage with every bottle of Barefoot, we said, buy the bottle of Barefoot for $5 or $6 and then give $10 more to this group. And here's why. So, we were the first commercial product to actually ask our customers to give money to a nonprofit organization.
So it looks like you talked about in your book about making your suppliers strategic partners.
Exactly, because our suppliers would benefit if we grew. So when we're successful, they're successful, they sell us more supplies, right? So we met with them also on a regular basis and told our suppliers what our challenges were, our goals and our opportunities. And because we could tell them that, for instance, we had these 600 stores, and once we passed this 100 store test phase, then we had to bottle up a lot of wine. And we're going to need a lot of glass corks and foils in order to do that, Mr. Supplier. And they said, well, you've been in touch with us for a long time, and you even call up when you're going to be late for a payment in the future. Nobody ever does that, right? Call up and say, hey, I'm going to be late for a payment. You've worked with us so closely, our suppliers said that, yes, we will front you more supplies for your bottling needs and give you longer credit so you can get going in this territory. That will obviously benefit both of us. So they're partners in that way. You don't have to borrow money to do that. You see, that's the real beauty of it. You just develop good relationships. And then our suppliers worked with us to help us grow.
One part of your book that I listened to over 3 times because I thought it was so unusual and unique was you talked about in 1995, there's a statewide white wine shortage, and your company purchased the white wine juice in Chile. And then you took it from there. I thought that was the most unique solution I'd ever heard of.
Well, we were blessed to have run into a fabulous winemaker, Jennifer Wall, who we incidentally were interviewing because we had a winemaker who basically told our salespeople to stop selling because we were running out of wine. and you never tell a salesperson to stop
No.
selling, no matter what. So we looked at each other and said, we probably got to find a new winemaker
New
now.
winemaker.
And so we started looking for a new winemaker, and we asked our friend about if he had known any, he was a winemaker for a very large winery. And we asked him if he knew of any winemakers that were looking for a job right now. And he said, well, there was a woman in here a couple of weeks ago, and I liked her. I wanted to hire her, but the board of directors thought that she was too assertive. And I said, well, get her over here right now. That's exactly what we're looking for.
That's our gal.
We want an assertive person in this job. And I said, well, we got to like her. I said, now we got a problem because there's a drought going on here for wine grapes in California in 1995.
For whites. Yeah.
For whites, what are we going to do? And she says, somewhere in the world, there's too much white wine, and we'll go find it. I said, okay. So she did. She went out, she started looking around, and she saw that Chile, the Mal Valley, the central region of Chile, actually had too many grapes. And so we thought, well, we'll go buy grapes down there. She went down there to buy grapes, but she didn't really like the way they were making the wine down there. So she couldn't buy wine that was already made. So she found out, because she was a chemist, that she could add SO2 to the grape juice right off the vineyards, right off the grapes, and put them into a large container and jack up the SO2 to a level where it wouldn't ferment on the 30-day trip from Valparaiso, Chile to Oakland, California. And then take it from there to a filter that was, I guess, made in Australia, that was located up in Hopland, California, and separate out the SO2 and bring it back to raw grape juice, and then add our own yeast and make wine here. So we were making wine in March. Now, most wine is made in August, September, October, November, December. So here we are making wine in the spring from grapes that were grown during our winter. So yeah, that was pretty amazing. And we have friends down there to this day in the Mal Valley of Chile as a result.
You also made your buyers strategic partners in your business.
Yes.
Yes, we did. That was really interesting. In the very beginning, we entered our wine in a competition, Sonoma County, wine competition, and our Sauvignon Blanc took first prize. So the next weekend, any of the medal winners were to pour for the public. So we were there the next weekend, all proud to pour our award-winning wine that we just made recently and put into bottle. And we found out that we didn't have all the licenses required to pour to the public. So we were doing it illegally, come to find out. And so we were busted. We were told that we either had to pay $10,000 fine, and we didn't have anything like that kind of money, or we had to not sell any wine, not be in business of selling wine for 2 weeks. So we said, okay, well, we don't have a choice about which one we're going to take. We can't sell for 2 weeks. So, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? So Michael decides to pre-sell the wine. He calls all of our buyers, our distributors, and he says, tell you what, you buy 2 or 3 times as much as you usually are buying, and I'll give you a good discount. Just pick it up now, get the order in this week, and pick it up by the end of next week, because we had a couple weeks notice, and you'll be saving some money. Oh, well, they were all happy about that, and they all did. So they had enough wine to get them over this 2 weeks of our not being able to sell. But what we found out, what was really interesting, is they had so much wine in the warehouse guy is saying, hey, I can't handle this much inventory. You, Mr. Buyer, had better put it out on the floor in big displays and put it on ad so we can move this stuff. So they put it out on the floor, they put it on ad, they made it more available to more people who bought more and came back asking for more. So we discovered the more you sell, to the distributors and retailers, the more they sell and the more they reorder. So that was a real blessing for us.
So that was one example of how we made our buyers strategic allies.
Yes.
Because when your buyer is buying from you in cash all up front, you don't have to borrow that money from the bank. You don't have to pay interest on that money. So
Okay.
this helps you get ahead in your bill paying, your cash flow. The other way that we engage them is we went to states like we went to Wisconsin.
Mhm.
And, Wisconsin had a lot of chain stores. It was a big state, but it would have taken us at least 3 or 4 years to get up to any volume in that state. So instead of doing that, we found this guy who had he had 5 stores, and they were in the Madison area, in some outside of Milwaukee, and it's called Brennan's, right? And so it's, and the guy who ran the place, his name was Brennan's. And I said, well, tell me about your store. He says, it's like the 4th of July. He says, you walk in my store, it's like the 4th of July. And we did go to Wisconsin, and we went in the store, and he did have all kinds of incredible displays, popping up all over the place. And he had special things from different parts of the world. So he was, kind of, predated Trader Joe's with an
Mhm.
approach that was very much like a Trader Joe's approach, but 5 or 10 years ahead of time. And so he got the exclusive for the entire state of Wisconsin. And he was selling thousands of cases right off the bat. So he advertised it, and he put up big displays and whatnot. And so what if we didn't cover the whole state of Wisconsin? We didn't care, because if we tried to cover the whole state, we wouldn't have made that degree of profit. We wouldn't have made that degree of volume. So that's another example of using your buyer as a strategic ally. We did that in several states.
Mhm.
We did that in Texas too.
Yes.
Tell us about your national Barefooters.
Well, those were the people who worked for us. Okay. And
Our salespeople.
yeah. And we learned about why we needed them in Hawaii.
Yes, Hawaii is the most natural place in the world to sell anything with the name Barefoot on it, right?
Hmm.
We thought it would just be a slam dunk. So in the early days, we were just starting, Michael went off to Hawaii to sell wine. He found a distributor, rode with the distributor sales reps, and went into the stores, the hotels, the restaurants, the bars. Everybody bought Barefoot. Boy, he came back, he was so excited. He goes, Hawaii is just really going to be the perfect place for our wine. Well, the distributor didn't reorder. And Michael says, well, I better go see what's going on, because we already learned you really have to be there in person to see what's going on. So Michael went back and went into the same stores that had bought, and they said, oh yeah, we sold through. Like that was the end of the story. He said, well, why didn't you reorder? Well, it was a new product. I guess I forgot. So Michael's looking at the sales rep, and he goes, well, I got, a bonus for selling some other product. And I was glad that you were out on the shelf, because that gave me shelf space to sell your competitor's product. And Michael says, oh, great. So he resold all those stores and comes back, and, he's talking to the salespeople, maybe giving them a little spiff, a little bonus ourselves. And we still didn't get another reorder from the distributor outside of to fill the sales that Michael had made the second time around. So Michael says, I guess I better go back to Hawaii. And I says, now hold on. I said, this is how much it costs for you to go to Hawaii. And this is how much profits that we make when you're doing that. I says, this isn't going to work. So we realized pretty shortly after that we need a barefooter in every territory where we sold the product, so that distributor could have somebody on our staff that is watching their warehouse, their salespeople, their retail accounts. Our barefooter salesperson would go into the retail accounts as well, make sure they had point of sale, they had the right price. He'd go into the community, find out what they were interested in, the nonprofit in the local area, support them, get point of sale material into the stores, and keep it rolling. Because if somebody isn't there representing our product and our company, then it's chaos and we couldn't grow. So that's what our Barefooters did.
Oh. It sounds like your company hired entrepreneurs and they were paid on productivity.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I had a guy come into my office one time. He said, "Oh," he says, "I'm here to apply for, a salesperson's job. How much does it pay?" I said, "Well, it has a $40,000 guarantee, and then above that, it's all commission." He says, "$40,000?" He says, "That's not enough." So I shook his hand and I said, "Well, thanks for applying at Barefoot. Good luck with your career." And then another guy came in pretty close after that, and he said, "I understand you got a sales job." He says, "What's the guarantee?" I said, $40,000. He says, "I can't live on that." I said, "No, I don't think you can. So thanks for applying.
Bye.
We'll see you later." So then the next guy comes in and he doesn't ask me what that is. He says, "You're getting your butt kicked in my state in Michigan. You can't get arrested with that brand in Michigan. And I know all the buyers there and I can really make a difference in Michigan." He says, "What's the commission structure look like?" He doesn't ask me what the base is. And I tell him, and he says, "Is there any cap on that?" I said, "No, there's no cap." I said, "By the way, where'd you go to high school?" He says, "Oh," he says, "I went to high school in Grand Rapids." He says, "Are you sure there's no cap on that?" I said, "No, there's no cap." I said, "Where'd you go to college?" He says, "Oh, I went to University of Michigan down in Ann Arbor." I said, "Oh, that's very cool." He says, "Are you sure there's no cap on that?" I said, "There's no cap on that, and you are so hired." So
The
that's
more you sell, the more you earn.
so that's a little story to demonstrate the kind of people we were looking for. We wanted people who could bet on themselves. Are you willing to bet your salary on your own production? Now, a lot of people, they don't like that because they want that guarantee and that security. But then there's others who are quitting the companies they're working for because they don't feel that they're getting paid for the energy they put in. They don't feel they're being respected. And so those are the people we wanted. We wanted the people who felt like they weren't getting paid for the level of production that they were creating.
Tell us about winning the Hot Brand Award in 2004.
Oh,
That was for growth.
yeah. And it was given by the editors of a very snobby wine magazine, the Wine Spectator, right? And it was the same group. And for them, Barefoot was a joke. It was just, some kind of a novelty. It was going to go away, and it was kind of an insult. They put a foot on the label. They tried to make it fun, and wine is serious business, and where there is mystery, there is margin. And so
They'd never written about us.
and so they thought we were cheapening wine, and so they kind of ignored us. They didn't want us. They wouldn't let us into the wine group or anything like that. And so for them to have to give us that award was really, I'm sure, tough on them. But we had achieved the metrics that they were looking for, which was 10% in those days, 10% growth over 2 years ago, 10% growth over the last year, and then 20% growth over those 2 years this year. So it's kind of a tough achievement. And we achieved it twice, 2 years in a row, the last 2 years that we owned the business. And, I'm happy to say that it has been a hot seller pretty much ever since. So we created something that is still expanding to this day.
Congratulations on the Barefoot Spirit being a New York Times bestseller. Please tell us about this experience.
Well, this was our book. And like I say, Rick Cushman had written it using our stories. So it's not prescriptive text. It's all fun stories. And it was really challenging to get it that thick because it started off about that thick and we had to leave out a lot of stories. But Rick was the right person to write for us. It's very entertaining. And it was a challenge and a delight, an honor to be a New York Times bestseller. And I think we were there for 8 or 9 weeks, weren't we?
In the business category.
In the business category.
Yeah, which was really nice for us because, we're business people and we were in the wine business, but we were in the business. It just happened to be wine. And since we've left the wine business, we're helping people in all kinds of businesses, software, spacecraft, you name it, all kinds of businesses. And the principles are the same. And so we wanted to communicate the principles, but we didn't, as Bonnie wanted to do it in the typical business fashion. Here's the 3 things you got to do, the 8 things to never do, the 20 things your customer wants from you. And that's the format for most business books for the last 25 years. And it's bloody boring because, you're not going to remember all those checkoff points. And you're reading a book and it's like an outline. So we said, well, let's make it more of a thriller. Let's make it more, of a cliffhanger. Let's make it more like a serial where you don't know if the proponents are going to make it or not. Are they going to get arrested? Are they going to go bankrupt? Is their best person going to leave? Are they going to run out of wine? How are they going to handle the next problem? And by showing the scenes in which the problems are solved, the reader gets a look at the thinking of the proponents. What are the principles that they keep relying on going back to? And that's the real education. That's the business education, but it's through story. And to get the New York Times bestseller was a real validation of that method of teaching.
Tell us about the audiobook being a finalist for an audio award.
The audio book came a few years after we had the paperback written. And we were speaking at universities that teach entrepreneurship for many years. And we saw a lot of students coming in with the earbuds in. And we asked them what they were listening to. Well, they were listening to business books. Well, we wanted to get our story out there to as many people as possible. So we said, if this is what they're listening to, then this is what we have to do. We've got to put it in an audiobook. And what's interesting is there are so many characters in the Barefoot Spirit, so much dialogue that we had actors from Hollywood in our audiobook play those characters. And so it is like a radio play. It's got sound effects, it's got music, it's got actors playing all the different parts. And it was very well received. It's a very exciting presentation.
Yeah, what was important for us was, the Audiobook Publishers Association is financed by the big audiobook publishers, whether it's Amazon or, Penguin or Harper. These are the big companies. And then there's Footnotes Press, right? From Forestville, California. We're up there with them.
Self-published.
We're self-published. And we actually were having a cocktail with one of the previous judges from years past. And she says, for you guys to be a finalist, one of the top 5 business books in the country for 2020 is
audiobooks.
Audiobooks is a miracle because you're not one of the big donors. So they must have really liked the method by which it was done. And as far as we know, it's the first time that a business audiobook has been done in this fashion with actors and actresses and sound effects and music. So we wanted to give our listeners entertainment first and then education second. So it's what we call experiential learning. When you're listening to a story that is like a 1940s radio show, there's a good reason those people were glued to the radio, because it was going off in their mind. They were seeing a movie in their mind, and they were grabbing the parts of the set, the various different props from their own memory, the chair, the window, the lights, all that stuff. Because when you see video, it's all there for you. But when you hear audio, you're forced to go and imagine it. So that imagination is the part where the listener participates in the story. And I think that's why stories are so indelible. And that's why stories teach us lessons that we go back and we remember the story. We say, oh, look, I remember what happened to Jim when he did this. I'm not going to be like Jim, you know?
So will you be making any follow-up books?
Yes, we've made some already.
Yes, we have. We've written this book, which is really fun. The Entrepreneurial Culture, 23 Ways to Engage and Empower Your People. And it's kind of a quick read. It's done in a different style than the Barefoot Spirit, but very educational. But what's even more important is we're making books, audio books, for business founders, business owners. And so this is our new project for the future, or that we're doing now.
Yeah.
It's very exciting to meet successful owners and to talk with them. And there's so many of the same business philosophies and principles that we learned that they are learning. But as a company grows, it's often a problem in their organization that people tend to get siloed and they're not talking to each other anymore. And so the idea of putting together an audio book for the founders of these companies is to engage their employees so they understand that the owner is a real person and had real struggles and maybe even did the job that the employee is doing now in the beginning, because entrepreneurs do all the jobs in the beginning. They wear every hat there is that has to be worn. And that allows the employees to engage more in the company and see their employer as someone who's a real person, who's authentic.
What an interesting area to go into. Please share with us any advice you would have for new writers.
Well, I would say, you know, what we've learned about writing is don't be afraid to get professional help. Okay, that's number one. The second thing is there's a lot of things about writing that is going on in the environment that you should make yourself aware of so you don't write yourself into a box. Like, for instance, with audiobooks, the audiobook retailers, online retailers, they give a sample of the audiobook, but their samples are always the first, you know, 4 or 5 minutes of the audiobook. Well, what if you have, you know, the cast of characters, you know, the various chapters, the forward, and a few things like that? You're going to get cut off before you ever get in the story. You have to go right into the thunderstorm. You see, you have to go right into whatever is the most exciting thing in the story, because that's your chance to grab that buyer and get him to push the buy button and buy your book. So if you know that going in, it's really important. You also have to know things like, you know, people's attention span. You know, their attention span is about 25 minutes. So if you're going to tell stories, you want to tell stories that are probably 2 to 4 minute stories and string them together in a 25-minute chapter. There's a relationship between the number of words and the amount of time that it takes to present or even read it. So you have to think about all that. So yeah, there's a lot of advice that we can give writers, that's for sure.
One thing that our writer, Rick Cushman, taught us was how to take all of these stories like this much and bring it into that much by cutting it down. How do you know which ones to cut it down? And you do a good job in telling this story. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I
Michael.
said, Rick, I said, you got this book you wrote for us or with us. It's 8 inches thick. How are you going to get it down to 5/8 of an inch thick? And by the way, that's about as thick as your book wants to be. He said, oh, well, he said, they asked the sculptor how he was going to make the image of the king out of the block of marble. And he said, well, it's easy. I'll just chip away everything that doesn't look like the king. And so the idea here is, what does the king look like? You know, what is the overriding principal message of your story? So writers need to be thinking about that before they put their pen to paper. You know, what is the simple message and not what are all the messages, but what's the simple message. And then think about all the messages that support or describe or,
Emphasize.
emphasize those points. But you got to get it down. I mean, write another book if you got another idea. Selling books is tough. It's really tough. You do a lot of promotion and you sell 10 books, right? So it's not.
Yeah, it's sad.
Yeah, it's sad. You don't make money as a writer, but you can get the word out to certain people who are buying. Like we have schools that buy our books and stuff like that. And when we were speaking, we would include 100 books with our speaking fee. So then we would be able to give people the books. But you have to figure out a way to give the books away rather than trying to think that you're going to sell them.
Michael says it's a calling card. It's a business card.
It is.
Hi, this is who I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, if you're an author, you really want to be a coal miner because you got to pay your bills, and you do that by mining a coal mine. And then you hope that when you speak or that when somebody reads your book, that they'll have a mine and they'll hire you to mine their coal mine.
Yeah.
See, so that's how you have to kind of look at it. It's not, you're not going to get rich writing a book or publishing a book. I mean, it's glorious. I mean, it's very romantic, like the wine business, but it doesn't pay.
I think for you, it will segue you into your other ideas and other things that you do for people.
Well, I'm
Like
hoping
an
so.
introduction.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. And we're hoping that this idea of becoming theatrical audiobook producers in the business world will turn a profit. We're hoping that it will. Because if we can get founders to say, you know what, I'm not going to live forever. I have to leave a legacy. This looks like a good way. It's cheaper than a video and more likely to be listened to. And I can put it on my website and it's a small file. I can download it and stuff. If we can get that word out, if we can find people, so that's why we have an affiliate program. So anybody who brings us a candidate that actually signs a contract, we reimburse them. And the guy that we're looking for, he's been in business for 10 years. He's the founder, he's the owner, and he's the president. He still controls the budget in his own company. But after 10 years, he knows it's a personnel, battle every day. He knows it. And he has 100 employees. And the reason he has 100 employees is so that when he sees the cost of the theatrically performed audiobook, it doesn't look like very much compared to his budget.
Yeah.
So, and also if he has 100 employees, he wants to give the book to his employees. He wants to say, here's my story, you guys. I wasn't born with a spoon in my mouth. This is what I had to do to get this job together for you, to get this business together for you, to build these clients. This is the true story. And maybe you'll identify with me and my challenges and my principles, and maybe you'll work harder, and maybe you won't leave my company. Maybe you'll be more loyal, and maybe you'll become, more, what's the word for it? Apostolic. You'll be telling people about what a great place it is to work.
So what are you doing now, and what do you see in your future?
We're meeting the most interesting business owners and founders. It is very exciting to be investigating how we can put together a business audiobook for them. And it has gained a lot of interest by a lot of people. And as we continue on our journey, we're seeing more and more people who submit articles to Entrepreneur Magazine and other places where entrepreneurs are reading that say that audiobooks and getting a message out in audio is really the thing to do now. And it's getting a lot more attention because you can be mobile and listen to an audiobook. You can be riding your bike or vacuuming your floor, or if we ever commute again to go to work, you could be doing it during your commute. You don't need a screen in front of you. You don't need a book in front of you that you're holding that's taking up your hands and your eyes. So we're pretty excited to have an opportunity to meet the business owners and founders that exist out there that can benefit by what we've learned, so we can create their story in an audiobook.
So I was going to ask you the advantages of the business audio theater over a standard audio book.
Well, aside from the point that Bonnie made, which is that it's truly mobile, you're not tethered to a screen or a page. The other advantage that I mentioned earlier is that it's experiential learning. So you're imagining the scenes and you're bringing up the props from your own memory, which makes it stick with you. But I guess the most exciting advantage is that it's more entertaining. You can hear intonation. You know when somebody's upset. You know when they're happy. You know when they're sad. You know when they're shocked. So you're getting that emotional message that you just don't get off the page. You're also getting sound effects, which is very interesting because it adds to the drama. And then you're getting music, and the music can be anything from, the sound, of Jaws, in a terrible situation that's getting closer, or it could be, a beautiful symphony on a lovely day. But the idea is that that's another form of communication. And so those are great. The other thing is it's a whole lot cheaper, if you will, or less expensive than video. If you wanted to do a movie, that would be very expensive, very big operation. And so this is like for a fraction of the cost. So what we're really saying is the advantage of this is you can do it. You can use it a lot of ways. You can use it as an onboarding tool. Hi, you want to work for a company? Listen to this. Or how about this? Don't even think about working for our company until you've heard this. Or how about this? We're going to put it on our website and let people download it and listen to it for free, so they get some idea that our company really did come from a garage or a laundry room or a roll-up, and that we weren't, born with a golden spoon in our mouth, and that we had to scramble. So that you'll have more appreciation for what we've done and identify with it, and maybe you'll want to work for us a little longer, and maybe you'll want to become more engaged. Maybe you will identify with our goals. After all, we are interested in the environment. We are interested in equal hiring. We're interested in equal pay. We're interested in customer service. These are the kinds of things that you can communicate in audio. And I think the last thing is that the owner doesn't have to be in the first person. It's not, I did this, I did that. It's the character who plays the owner does it. So you get a chance to communicate with people in the third person, which is a wonderful way for a founder to get his message across without sounding patronizing.
And what's the best way for our listeners to learn more and to contact you?
Well, that would be our website, www.thebarefootspirit.com. And we have a separate website and LinkedIn page for Business Audio Theater, which is the audiobook that we're doing for other business owners.
Okay.
Wonderful talking with you today.
You too. It's a pleasure meeting you. We'll stay in touch with you.
Yes, thank you very much.
And thank you for the wonderful endorsement of our audiobook.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
Thank you so much.
We're just
Pleasure.
beside ourselves to get that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thanks, Paul.
thank you.